Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening, and welcome to another edition of our international English online meetings. This morning we have a special guest, Miss Jovana Zivkovic. Is that well pronounced? Well, she's from Serbia, and thank you, Jovana, for giving us part of your time this morning.
Thank you, Jaime, for inviting me. Can I go ahead and share screen? Yeah. Or you would like to
First, give me a few minutes to start the presentation, and then you will be
Okay.
showing your screen. So this is our 129th International English Online meeting. You can watch all the past videos in our YouTube channel. Who are our guest speakers in 2025? Well, Tina Afrosa from Bangladesh in April, Eva Ramos, Deray Quijada, Zuleika Zapateiro in May. They are from Panama. James Swissler from Australia in June. Carlos Daniel Pasco, Hazel Acosta, Marta Lara, Evelyn Almeida from Ecuador in June. David Bertrand and Ricardo Diaz from Honduras in July. Karina Caballero, Paola Ortega, Isela Coronado in August. They are from Bolivia. Evelyn Lugo, Princess Kimberly from Puerto Rico in September. Marcela Burgos from Argentina in October. Casey Ramirez, Adriana Sanchez, Claudia Maria Uribe from Azocopi, Colombia in December. And who is presenting today? Well, our guest, Jovana Zivkovic. Let me say a few things about her. Jovana holds a master's degree in pedagogy from the Universidad de Los Andes and a certificate in language program management from Columbia University in the United States. With 10 years of experience as an English teacher at Universidad de Los Andes and over 7 years of experience as a senior educational consultant for the British Council. Jovana has designed training programs for over 2,000 teachers from the Education Secretariat of Bogotá and led a large-scale online English programs, English Without Borders, for more than 20,000 students. She has experience an examiner for international exams and has led projects for developing materials and courses for students and teachers in Colombia and abroad. And her main interest, let me move this, her main interests lie in designing, learning, and teaching experiences that have a positive impact on learning outcomes. The most important is a very good human being. So thank you, Jovana, for giving us part of your time on a Sunday morning, and the screen is all yours.
Thank you, Jaime. Okay, I love the photos that you chose them. I was surprised, but they're nice. Okay, so we're gonna start. I know that this is like a conversation, informal. However, I did prepare quite a dense presentation for today, which I hope will be useful. And we can talk to our fellow teachers here today, so we can share ideas. So the topic of our presentation today is 3 tips to design materials like a pro. I would say that it is very hard to be a pro, but let's get motivated and hope that one day we'll get to that level of material design. I'm going to share the 3 tips, but before I do, I would like to ask everybody here who is with us on Zoom, and also those of you who are connecting via Facebook, to share with us and answer the following questions. Jaime will, of course, be the first one to share as our host. So
Okay.
Teachers are superheroes for me because they spend their lives dedicating time to creating classes, working with students, sharing knowledge, and they always have to do quite a few activities. So as superheroes have superpowers, teachers also have superpowers. So my question for you today is, number 1, what is your material design superpower? Number 2, what would be your superhero name? Like if you had to choose one superhero name, what would it be? And then number 3, what have you designed or what have you done in your life as a teacher that makes you earn that name of that superhero. So I'm going to start just to give you an idea. So if I had to choose a superhero name for myself, I would probably be Lady Sequence. Why? Because I love designing narratives and staging and sequence for materials and for classes. I enjoy it. I think I do it quite well. There are other things I don't do that well, but when it comes to staging of a lesson or materials, I would say that's my strength. Jaime, what would be your superhero name? And then
Maybe creating material for beginners and elementary. I love creating cards with their names, pictures of their favorite actors or singers. And my superhero name would be maybe Spider-Man. He travels all over New York. I love New York, the buildings and the streets. And what have you designed that makes you earn that name?
yeah,
Maybe
it should be connected to material design, something you feel good at.
as I said before, maybe these cars for students on the first day of class, they are really excited when they got their car with their name on it, and they say, "What? The teacher knows my name, and he created that piece of paper for me," and they feel really motivated and excited. I don't know about the other people here.
It would be a super card.
Yes.
Let's see what other teachers say. So you can turn on your microphones or you can just post on the chat. You can also post on Facebook.
Yeah, so Sandra, Nuria, Jared, Sonia, if you have an answer, you can open up your microphone. Sandra?
Thank you. I think I would be like my superhero name would be like Material Girl. No, yeah, no, Mystery Girl. Because there is a game that I always play. I have worked with children most of my life for almost 25 years. And there is a game that I always play with them. This was a tough question for me. This was difficult. I was like, oh my gosh. And then I create always the mystery box, which is just little like words, pieces of paper, and they write a word. And then as we work with the building, the vocabulary, we play the mystery box game, which is they take a piece of paper and they always describe that word, and it's so fun for them because they have to discover something new, no, and they build vocabulary with that game. So I think that is that one is my favorite because it's fast, it's easy, and help them a lot to build vocabulary.
Thank you, Sandra. I like that name. I like the first version as well. I know Sandra, I saw Sandra work. Sandra is very creative with students, I have to say.
Oh,
So
thank you.
she's a tough audience.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll let you share on the chat. If anybody wants to interrupt us, feel free to do that. I'll just continue so we can respect the time we have for today. Now, as superheroes have superpowers. Hi, Stephanie, welcome. As superheroes have superpowers, they also have their weaknesses, right? And that's normal. So we usually have, my favorite superhero is Superman, yeah? And we know that Superman has his weakness, and that's the kryptonite. So my next question for you is, what is your design kryptonite? Like, what's your weakness in design? My weakness in design is creating videos, I have to say. I don't feel comfortable creating videos because I lack skills. Jaime, what's your weakness?
Same thing. I can create videos. I can publish the subtitles. I can add different designs that students can do easily.
Okay, thank you. Stephanie, would you like to share your weakness? Although I do know that you have also lots of strengths and superpowers in material design.
That's okay. I am very good with creating videos actually and visual things, but I have a lot of issues with writing clearly.
Okay. Okay, that's I think many of us struggle with writing, especially when it comes to instructions, maybe. I personally sometimes struggle, I give too much instructions. Garrett said wait, wanting to include too much information. That happens to me, and today you will probably see that in my presentation. Nuria said
We haven't seen that yet.
not yet. I think you're seeing it as Nuria said the same. She said time. I would say time and content are usually quite related. Thank you for sharing, Nuria. If we have, I'm checking also our Facebook, but if you see anything, Jaime, want to interrupt
Yes,
me?
of course. I will let you know.
Okay, so today here we want to talk about that. So we want to talk about material design, and we're going to have two big questions to answer today. So question number one is going to be basics, like what is instructional design, what is material design, and what is curriculum design. We probably know it, but these terms sometimes maybe overlap in practice, so we're going to clarify that before we start. Then number two, I'm going to give you three key tips to design effective materials. And to start, and for that, these three tips that we will mention as we go. Number one will be the hardest one because it's lots of theory, very common sense theory, but it's theory. So I want you to take notes. Is the most dense one. Number two is the easiest one, the most practical one. And then number three is going to be a mix of two. So it will have some evidence-based research, but then it will also show examples to apply in practice. And how are we going to do that? So I'm going to give you some data or some science, what smart people say about material design. Then I'm going to give you a secret formula for each one, for each of the tips. I'm going to share one secret formula. I'm going to give you examples. I'm going to give you some examples from my teaching practice, which are maybe strong and others that are not so strong. So sharing with teachers also includes sharing examples that are maybe not the best, so we can learn from each other's mistakes. So I'm going to share some of my mistakes with you. We're going to have a checkpoint for each tip, so we can check how much you understood, ask questions, and then you're going to have a mission for today. Your mission for today will be, except for taking notes on what each tip is, it will be finding mistakes in my design. So as we go, I want you to pay attention to what I'm doing well and what I'm not doing so well, okay? Now, to start, I created a Mentimeter. I will open it. However, since we're such a small crowd today, such a small group, you can also feel free to turn on your microphones and discuss. So we're going to start with what is the first aspect you think about when designing materials, okay? So you're designing your materials for your class tomorrow. What is the first thing you think about? And then we're going to clarify the three terms: instructional design, curriculum design, and material design, okay? To do that, I would like to ask you to scan the code. You can do it with your cell phones if you're connected from your computer, but I will also share the link here so you can connect directly, okay, for those of you who are here on Zoom, and then those of you who are connecting from Facebook, you can scan the code, okay? So I'll give you a moment to scan the code. Let me know if it's working.
Working.
Thank you, Stephanie. And then I'll give you a couple of more minutes. And then I'll be showing questions here. So our first question is going to be this one. So what is the first aspect you think about when designing materials? You can post on Menti or turn on your microphone, however you feel comfortable.
Well, in my case, because I haven't connected,
Of
would
course.
be the level of students.
Very good. Okay.
Number two would be the age of the students.
Very
Number
good.
three, the objectives. Yes, just like they are writing now.
Excellent. So yeah, we usually think about objectives. That's very important. Age and level, definitely also important. Now, I'm going to show you definitions of the three terms, okay? And the narrative. Thank you for sharing this. Very important. So how you engage and what's the narrative of the class? What are the steps? The level, the age, objective, and student needs and interest. Good ideas. Perfect. I'm going to go to the next one. So I'm going to show you, so on the left, oh, sorry, on the right, the other left, on the right, you're going to see a definition. And then I want you to tell me what it is. Is it curriculum design, instructional design, or material design? I'll give you a moment to read for yourself instead of me reading out loud. Okay, so the correct answer is curriculum design. Excellent job. Since everybody responded correctly, I will not go deeper into this topic. Let's go to the next one. So again, I'm going to show you a definition and you will tell me what it is. Curriculum design, instructional design, or material design. This is a tricky one, I have to say. We'll be using the same Menti during the whole session. So just save it there on your phones, and then I'll be going back and forth like to my PowerPoint and then also here so you can participate. Okay, 50-50. Let's see, the moment of truth. It's instructional design. Let's see why it is instructional design and not material design. Yes, it has that one part is designing materials, but also you design the learning experience. And then you also have to think about how students interact. So when you think about sequencing and when we have to think about how students will interact with certain materials or with each other and materials too, that becomes instructional design. Okay. Let's see the last one. So what do you think about this one? Okay, so now it's a little bit easier, right? Because we already had two. Okay, and yes, the correct answer is material design. Very good job. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to my, no, sorry, I'm going to show you a couple more questions, but this time I'm going to give you an example and I want you to tell me what the example is. So we're going from definitions to maybe more practical examples. Let's see the first one. So this one says, design an interactive presentation on Genially or Mentimeter for an English class. What would this be? Okay, I'm going to show the answer. Very good. This would be definitely material design because you're focusing on designing probably visual materials and using apps to create it. Okay, let's see next one. Outline the content for a course English for Engineers. You're fast. Very good. So this is definitely curriculum design. One person said instructional design. I do understand why one person said instructional design because instructional design sometimes includes lots of things and it's very similar to curriculum design. But if you're designing, outlining the content, writing objectives, maybe weekly pace guide, that would definitely be curriculum design because you're still not thinking about interactions, you're still not thinking about materials, but only focusing on the course syllabus. So whatever is syllabus is usually curriculum design. Okay, let's see next one. Sequence the learning activities in an academic reading lesson. So here you have a lesson, you have to sequence the activities. Most probably think what they will do in each stage. I'm giving you hints. Okay, excellent job. So this is definitely instructional design. Very good. And I think this is the final question, yes, for this part. So design a game to check understanding. Let's say you want to check high order or lower thinking skills, whatever, something you've done in class, you design a short game, a quick game to check understanding. What would this be? This one is also maybe a bit tricky.
It is.
It's good it's anonymous, right? So we can.
Responding is turn off.
Stephanie?
Responding is turn off, but I think it's material design. It says that responding is turned off.
Okay, let me see what happened there.
And you also have it on your presentation. It says press C to allow response.
Yeah, I don't know why. Give me a second to see what I clicked on. I click C. My C is not responding. Give me a second. Okay, it should be working now. Thank you, Stephanie. I probably clicked on a C without wanting. Okay, material design, curriculum design. So this one will be material design because now we're focusing on one part, one specific resource that we're designing for our classroom. Okay, and then our final one is this one, design an online module on how to write resumes or CVs in a foreign language. Again, my responding is off. Now it's on. Okay, so this is also a tricky one. When I usually have this question with teachers, we are usually in between the two, curriculum and instructional design. I wrote instructional design because it's online. You have to think about the look and feel of the page, of the module, of how they will click, where they will click, what comes first, what comes next, what kind of images you will need, maybe whether you need videos. So I would say that it's instructional design. But then also understand why maybe 3 people went for option number 2. Perfect. So now we've checked our previous knowledge, and now we're ready to continue. So your mission for today, as I mentioned, is to, as I go and as I work with you, I want you to find mistakes in my delivery, because we always make mistakes in design, in delivery. It's part of our life. We're humans. So I want you to think about which of the 3 tips that I'm going to show you now I applied correctly, consistently, and in which of the 3 did I fail? Like, where do you notice that I'm not right? So you'll be my judges today, and feel free to criticize so I can also
Okay, I like that. I like that.
take notes, Jaime. I look forward to your constructive criticism. Okay, and now we start with tip number 1. This is my favorite tip, usually not favorite for everybody, but for me, my favorite tip, the most dense one. And tip number 1 is focus on how your students learn, not on the content you should teach. When we start teaching, we usually think about learning objectives, and that's important because with learning objectives, especially if they're student-centered, we can focus on what they need to learn and how they need to learn it instead of the content only. So for this tip, I'm going to give you a bit of theory and a couple of examples, okay? So we should focus on how people learn, not only on the content. I'm going to show you some examples here in a bit. And before that, I want to tell you where I got this information from. So my very good friend Garrett, a couple of years ago, shared a book with me, which you see on the screen, on instructional design. And this book helps us understand how to structure materials to facilitate the understanding and retention of content. So it focuses not on the content itself, but on how humans learn, okay? And then there's another book which I then found, which is called Multimedia Learning from the same author, Meyer. And this book gives us principles on how humans learn, and they're based on cognitive processing theory, basically how people process information, and multimedia learning theory. Now, we started talking about this more during the pandemic and after, but this is not new. This has existed long before. So based on these two books, I share them here just in case you want to explore them later. I'm sure you'll like them. We asked this question, so how do adults learn? And here I'm going to give you 12 principles from Clark and Meyer from the first book that tell us how people learn and what we should be careful with when designing materials. Before I go into deeper into principles, I just have a question for our teachers here. Are you already familiar with the 12 principles? Just so I know how detailed I should be. You can say a bit, not really, not at all. There are no wrong answers. You can write on the chat. Let me see what teachers say. No, okay, perfect. So I'll start, okay? So principle number 1 is called multimedia principle, okay? You will notice that the names are also very common sense, very easy to understand. So what does multimedia principle say? It says that people learn better from different sources, okay? Let's say we have a PowerPoint presentation or we're designing an online module. So people learn better with a combination of images and text. So if we combine images and text, they will learn better than simply giving them a PDF document with lots of text to read, or a book. Sometimes you have to read a whole book, of course, but like if you're explaining something, it's better not to have only words, but also to have some graphs or graphics or visuals or something that will help them retain knowledge. Now, this is also connected. These principles now we follow Clark, the author, but like if you think about earlier authors such as Ebbinghaus and how people remember and how people forget, it's the same thing. If we have images, we remember better, okay? Let's see number 2. Principle number 2 is the coherence principle. Now, this principle is very important. In the age of visual design, we sometimes create presentations that are amazing, that are beautiful, that have lots of pictures, that have animations, that are crazy. But the coherence principle says that we should only add information and visuals and design that is actually helping people learn. So if something is beautiful just for the sake of being beautiful and aesthetic, but it's not contributing to their learning, we should not do it. So we should not use it. So we need to be coherent with pictures and videos and whatever you're using for multimedia, and it should be very closely aligned with your learning objective. This principle is very easy to break nowadays because we have so many apps. We have so much for visual design. And sometimes we think if it's beautiful, it's great. It's not enough. Yes, it can be fun for a while, but we have to be careful that it's connected, okay? Principle 3, signaling principle, one of my favorites. Signaling principle, as the name says, is you have to signal something, right? So if you design something for your students, you need to have arrows and boxes and things that help students understand where to look, okay? So signaling the content. Ready for the next one, Jaime?
Yeah, ready, go.
I hope you're taking notes because I'm going to have a quiz after this.
Oh my God.
Yes, so redundancy principle. This principle is very much related to multimedia principle. Why? Because redundancy principle says, okay, we have different multimedia that we can use, right? But we should be careful not to be redundant and not to show the same information in 2 formats. I'm going to give you an example. The most common mistakes teachers make is show a text on a PowerPoint, right? Show a picture next to it, and then tell students, okay, let's read out loud. And then once students start reading out loud from the slide, this is not helping people learn, according to what Clark says. Why? Because it becomes redundant. So you should be careful how many different sources of information students receive. If they're receiving visual, like a text they need to read, a paragraph, an explanation, definition, but they also receive it through their ear. Cognitive processing theory says that there's going to be a clash there. They won't be able to do so much. So we create unnecessary cognitive load. If you notice, when I open my Mentimeter, I showed you a definition and I said, read it. I just gave you a moment for you to process that information. I didn't read it aloud because you had that, you had a picture, you would have my voice, it becomes too much. So redundancy principle says that there should not be redundant information on the slide. Either read it out loud, put a picture and explain it, a picture and explain it, or a text and just let students read and process information in their own time. Next principle is spatial contiguity principle. Spatial means space, right? So this principle says this: if I'm going to explain something, I should spatially put things close to each other. If you have a chart, a table, everything should appear close to each other for the term you're explaining, okay? And related to this is a temporal principle. So if I'm going to say temporal principle, temporal should appear at the moment when I explain it. So basically, you should use animations in your PowerPoints. You should not show all of the information at once because it's overload. I'll give you an example. I have 12 principles here. Imagine if I did this, and then I said, okay, let's explain principles. You start reading, you start listening, you start being overwhelmed, right? So these two are very common sense. The next one is segmenting principle, also one of my favorite. So as teacher, we sometimes decide which content to teach and we just go and go and go and go and we teach it. And then at the end of the class, we do some checking understanding. But this principle says you need to chunk the information you're teaching, you need to divide it into segments. What's the name of my presentation for today? Who can help?
Tips for effective material design.
Very good. So you immediately know, I told you, okay, there are going to be 3 tips. So I divided super dense information to, let's say, 3 big areas. And now you can start chunking it, and you can focus on certain segments. And then I'll be checking understanding after each one to make sure that you're retaining the knowledge. Sorry. Next one, pre-training principle. It says pre-train your audience. Don't assume they know it. Example, I know that you know what's material design and instructional design, but today we did some pre-training. Okay, let's double check how much we know. The same thing happens with technology. Don't assume your students know how to use a Mentimeter. We say they're digital natives, right? I mean, they are. We are also car natives because we were born in the era of cars, but do we necessarily know how to drive? No, we have to learn. So they don't know how. I made them drive, no. Okay. So you're a car native that needs training, same as
Yes,
students.
lots of training.
Yeah. Students also need training in how to use technology in basic terms you're going to use during the lesson. Modality principle, another principle that says that it's connected to multimedia, okay? So this modality principle say that there are better ways to learn. What are better ways to learn? So visual and words, and that's it. Visual information and words. So you show a picture or a graph and you explain it with your voice. Okay, you don't put an explanation on the screen. So combinations of different media will help them to learn better. Voice principle. This one is maybe a bit controversial now in the era of AI, but basically the authors say that if you're going to create something, for example, if you're creating a video, don't be a talking head and don't have a whole video where it's like me now talking and explaining, but start explaining like this, like a talking head as I am now, and then move yourself away from the video and show only the PowerPoint. So if people here like to create videos, this voice principle is important. So have only your voice explaining something instead of having your talking head like I'm doing now. Another thing that this principle says is that it's always good to have your voice, human voices, instead of maybe AI voices. Now, this is difficult today because we have a couple of tools that have very natural voices, right? Not all of them, that it's still developing. So you will hear AI talk. It's still not that natural in all apps. Some apps are more natural than others. But if you can explain something to your students, it's much better than creating weird materials with weird voices that are not natural. Personalization principle, also maybe my third favorite. Sometimes we use lots of meta language when we teach, right? So we say, okay, we're going to teach present simple and then nouns and parts of speech. And then we start discourse analysis. And then maybe in our classroom, we have students who are not language majors. Do they really care about meta language? Do they understand it? Maybe not really. Do they need it for life? Probably not. So personalization principle says you need to personalize the lesson to your audience. So avoid anything that's not personal. Talk in the first person to your students and choose your language carefully and design instructions very carefully so they talk directly to the person and they're not impersonal for them. And then the final one is the image principle. This one also has to do with what you present on the screen and how you show videos, okay? So for example, if you're designing explanations, choose your pictures very carefully and make sure, sorry, I have some messages here. Carnate, yeah, sorry, I didn't see that one. Try to choose high quality pictures and be careful how you explain those pictures and don't overwhelm your audience with pictures and video and voices, etc. So these 12 principles are basically everything we need to know so we can design materials that help adults learn, okay? Now, did you take notes? I hope you did, because I'm going to show you my example. So I made this a couple of days ago. I was very proud of myself when I made it. However, 5 hours later, I noticed that I was not following the principles. I want you to take a look at it and tell me what's wrong with this. Do you want me to go back so you can take a picture of principles, maybe? Or you're good?
I think going back and taking a picture would be really helpful.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Okay, now I'm gonna go to the, so one thing is wrong here, and it has to, I'm gonna give you a hint. It has to do with this information here, and then this explanation here. Oh, sorry. So this is a class for people who want to create a CV in English, and then I asked them to do it with ChatGPT and to do some analysis, and then they get this, and they need to understand their keyword strength and placement effectiveness, etc. But like, what would you struggle with if I gave you this as a student? How would you feel, Stephanie?
You could have cognitive overload, like
A bit. Yeah, you would have a bit of yeah. I also had overload when I was proud as a creator, and then I put myself into their shoes, and I was like, I have cognitive overload here. Any specific principle maybe you notice is wrong?
Yeah, the one for cognitive overload is redundancy. Redundancy.
Very good. It is a bit redundant. I didn't think about that one. Thank you, Stephanie. I wrote another one you'll see in a moment, but that one too. Okay, I'll give you the answer, okay? So I wrote signaling principle. Why? Because there's an explanation here and then this here, but like they don't know where to look. So they have to read everything and figure it out. And then my second version was this one, where I simply gave them, yes, it can also be, yeah, could be maybe spatial as well, Garrett, maybe you're right. So basically I need to signal, okay, look at this is what it is. Look at this is what it is. People don't want to spend too much time figuring out materials. They need to be easy to understand, okay? Now, let's go back to our Mentimeter, because now I'm gonna check your understanding. Quiz, Jaime.
Oh my God.
To see how much you understood. Are you already on the Menti so I can play it, or you need to scan it?
I need to scan, I guess.
Go ahead. Scan it, and then it's the same Mentimeter, like it didn't change. You can also access from the link. Okay.
Do I have to stay in the same activity, the one before? I mean, this
It's the same.
Okay.
It's the same, Sandra. You're good. Okay. So let's see how much we understood. So what I'm going to give you is a situation, what a teacher did. Wink, wink, me probably in my life many times. And then you will tell me what principles I'm not respecting, okay?
Is
Let's
there
see.
a
Now,
present, a gift for the
there's a
winner?
yes. The present is when you get to Bogota, you get a cup of coffee.
Second
So
block.
let's see this one. So in an online course, teacher uses a PDF reading worksheet, like a PDF with a text, with questions, with lots of information. There are no visual elements or interactions. Excellent. Now, why do you think it's multimedia? Who wants to share?
Because you said that learners have a better understanding of the material when they have at least two different sources, visual or text or audio or some visual.
Very good job. Excellent job. So that's the correct answer. So if it's only text, it's hard. So maybe a picture, a graph, whatever helps them deal with the text. This mistake, I used to do this a lot when I was teaching reading courses. Probably many. Now I don't teach reading courses, but like I think that this is the easiest mistake to make. Okay, next one. Teacher shares the screen with a PDF without images with many writing exercises, drilling, like writing sentences, using connectors, etc. Some examples are very easy, you will see. I left it in Spanish. Sorry for that. It's a good thing that everybody here speaks Spanish.
Okay.
I didn't even notice. Wow. I don't know why I wrote.
Interculturality, maybe.
Yeah. Don would be happy with translanguaging here, right? Because I don't know why. Like I was probably writing in one language and just went to another. Okay. So for me, it's basically all three, most probably. But I don't know. Tell me what you think, how you see it. Like people who said señalización. Why?
I was actually expecting segmentation, and I thought multimedia also.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think of signaling because I made a mistake. I assume, and I cannot assume, that the teacher would have the instructions on the PowerPoint.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. I think Jaime Stephanie is going to get that coffee, not you.
Yeah, she will. And a trip to Cusco, Peru, Machu Picchu.
Also, and Piura. Okay. So, next one. Teacher shares a PowerPoint. The slides have dense text and some images. Teacher asks some volunteers to read aloud from the slide. Does anyone do this in their classes? Like show slides and ask students to read?
Yes.
We do that a lot, yeah. Okay. Redundancy. Tell me why redundancy. Maybe it's redundancy. Who wants to share? Maybe I wasn't sure here.
That you use many resources and you confuse the students with those resources.
Could be. Mm-hmm. So I put all of them. Oh no, sorry, this might be my mistake. But like for me, it's redundancy in multimedia. Redundancy because you show them the text and then you ask them to read, as you said, and then that's a problem because they cannot process. Because why would you see it written but then also read it aloud? So let students simply process the information. Let me see which other I have here. Okay. I want you to tell me, based on these 12 principles, think quickly about an activity you designed maybe last week, something you did last week, and tell us, okay, I did this and it follows this principle. And then you will tell me, I did this and it didn't follow this principle. So a good and a bad example you had last week. Who wants to share?
Yeah.
Stephanie, go ahead.
Sorry for over participating.
No, that's perfect, Stephanie. That's perfect.
Okay. Well, I was designing a workshop with a coworker, and it was beautiful. Beautiful. It was visually appealing. So it had a lot of multimedia, but it had very bad signaling. So we had to redesign it all over, not from the images, but the instructions.
That's a very good example. That also happened to me many, many, many times. And it still happens to me probably every week. Okay. Jaime, you want to share? You want to fight for that coffee or not?
No, I let the other people fight for it.
Okay. And let's think of a positive example. Does anyone want to share a positive example you have from your teaching? I'm sure you have many. It's hard to remember one, but go ahead. One principle you do follow when you teach. Garrett, would you like to share?
No, I'm still reflecting about the redundancy principle that happened to me last week, where I had the students, they had a list of instructions for the lab activity they had, but I read them out loud. And so I was still thinking about that.
Yeah. I do that all the time. And I think that we probably do it because we want to make sure we cover everything in class. And we sometimes worry that if we just give them 3 minutes to read, maybe
And
they
ask
won't
me
listen.
questions if you don't understand it, because it's
Yeah.
written 1 through 6.
Yeah.
Go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or check understanding maybe afterwards, right? But yeah, I also do that. Okay, thank you for sharing. Okay, so tip number two. I love this tip. So engage your students from the very beginning. Everything starts with the name. Everything. I think I'm gonna show you first an example. A colleague of mine was very generous to share this with me, and I really appreciate it because seeing examples like this shows how much time we spend designing materials, and we still can make mistakes that can affect learning. So what do you think about this example? Imagine you're in this class, you go in, you're an engineering student, you're a system engineer student, a system engineering student, sorry. And then you go into the classroom, teacher walks in, Jovana goes in, and Jovana says, okay, present perfect today, guys, signaling words. So what's present perfect and how do we form it? Well, it's formed from the present tense of the verb have and or has, and then past participle of the verb. What's happening in their
Well,
heads?
I think that, I mean, it has been a big debate about that topic, but not all the students need to know grammar in order to speak or communicate. You see, I did because I am a teacher, no? And so I know grammar, but I don't know if teachers to communicate effectively really need grammar. I have grammarless classes with children and they don't need to know if that word was an adjective or not. So I'm not sure, but it's a big debate, actually.
I think Sandra is an excellent person to comment on this because Sandra used to work in schools right, Sandra? You have many experience in schools.
Yes, with kids.
And you probably work on acquisition there with them, like they acquire languages as you go, okay? Thank you, Sandra. Stephanie says it's a personalized, it is grammar focused, it is not engaging. I like that it has little text, very good. So all presentations, I like that Stephanie said, I like that. All presentation has something very positive, and then there are some flaws. The problem that I see here is that number one, it is Garrett says, it is not multimedia. The visuals do not support any meaning making. Very good, Garrett. This is true. I didn't think of it, but this is really true. So the visuals do not support any meaning making. And in our classes, we want to have that meaning making. So my first issue is I go in, I love grammar because I studied languages. Does a system engineer love grammar? Not really sure. Does he need to start with present perfect? No. What they need to know is, like in business, right? Like in sales pitches, what's in it for them? Why am I here with you for 1 hour? One student told me that the other day. He said, I'm going to spend 6 hours in your classroom this week. I could be doing something else with those 6 hours. I could be programming. I could be looking for jobs. What's in it for me? So that first slide that you share with your students should be what's in it for them. And here I'm going to share with you something I learned in a course recently from Tecnológico Monterrey, where they shared a couple of tips. They were super simple and I love them and I want to share them with you here today. So when we show this, everything students here like blood teacher talking. Roxana is laughing, teacher talking about grammar. And like they switch off, they don't pay attention. So I'm going to give you 2 different formulas here, okay? Let's see the first one in just a moment. So focus on what the student gains by being in your class, okay? And the secret formula is give them a number, an adjective, a noun, action, and a promise. There has to be a promise. And by the end of your class, you need to fulfill that promise. Okay? Today I told you 3 tips. Imagine if I give you only 2. How would you feel?
Demotivated, disappointed.
Totally. So Jaime would never invite me again. Right? So like if I tell you in my class, I'm going to give you 3 tips. You want to learn those 3 tips. You expect Jovana to give you what she promised. So this is the first formula you can use. Very simple. 10 easy steps to create high quality materials without being an expert. So give them a number. You say something engaging, like people like everything what's easy even when it's not easy. So say something effective, easy, interesting, useful, whatever. Steps, action to create high quality materials, what you're going to do. And there's a promise without being an expert. You don't have to be an expert. You will be able to do it. Now, how can you do this? Well, you can sit down and think, okay, what am I giving you today? What's my promise for today? What's in it for you? Or you can use your favorite AI. Okay, how can you use your favorite AI? Well, go to Gemini, go to Superbot, go to any OpenAI, Copilot, and just copy paste this. Okay, so you can say, act as a content expert and create 5 title proposals that contain this structure. You give it a structure. And then what you do need to do is tell it for this topic or for this learning outcome. So the AI can give you. So use AI as a helper, as we see on the picture here. So use it to help you to create the title. I tried it with my materials, okay? These are my materials. Can you imagine my students who are business majors, engineers, biomedical engineers, and they go into Jovana's classroom and Jovana says, okay, paraphrasing and summarizing. Am I engaging them? Do you think they're going to participate? Probably not, right? Who wants to know about paraphrasing and summarizing? Nobody. Only language majors, right? And I don't teach language majors. So again, blah, 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 teacher talking about grammar. So what I did was I used the prompt that I just showed you. I copy pasted it into a bot, into a OpenAI. And I did it in Spanish first to see how it goes. So I said, okay, actúa como un experto de contenido de alto valor, blah, blah, blah. And it gave me 3 proposals. So, 3 trucos sencillos para, 5 pasos eficaces para parafrasar. So it immediately gives you some ideas following the formula. So what I did was I looked at the 3 that it gave me, I modified them a bit, and then I created this. 7 tips to paraphrase like a pro. Why 7? Because my content needed 7. You can put 57 if you want. Now, with this one, yeah, you can.
Too many.
Many, like my presentation today, Jaime. So what did I achieve once I applied this content? And once I finish the course, I usually ask my students. So I ask them to tell me what went well and what did they hate. I tell them, tell me what to continue doing as a teacher and what should I never do again with anybody. So with this material, what they said is, as my animation here says, is like, we immediately started being curious, like, okay, what are the 7? And they started paying attention because I promised 7, they wanted 7, right? What are the effects on learning? Increases curiosity. They have a purpose to participate. They're like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they start taking notes, they start talking to each other. You can connect this with your exit ticket. So at the end of the class, you can say, okay, who can name 7? So they start competing. And then this helps you with the principle, one of the principles, to chunk your information, to the information again, to have segments. And after each of the 7, I do checking understanding with a Mentimeter, with a game, with whatever, okay? So this one for me worked because this course is not interesting for students. It is academic writing. Would a system engineer be interested in academic writing? Probably not. They don't write that much. So with this, I was like, okay, I engaged them at the beginning. Now, go give me a second. Okay, another one. So the first one was give them a number, give them an adjective, right? 7, effective, tips, 2, blah, blah, blah. This is a new one. Focus on big questions. You know that in education, we have this whole area when you design curriculum to design it with big questions. So here you can use it in one class. So for example, you can use the formula how to or what are. So the formula is how, action, promise. Okay, here is an example. How to launch a successful marketing campaign with examples. So you have a how, you have an action to launch, they expect to do that, okay? And then you have a promise at the end. Again, with this one, you can do the same. So you can ask your AI to help you because we're busy, we don't have time. So you can say, act as a content expert and create 5 proposals that contain the structure, how, action, promise for teaching present perfect to students, whatever. And then you can do it. With this one, I also had a super boring topic, in-text citation reporting verbs. No one ever wants to learn about that, right? Except for people who are really interested in writing papers and publishing, which generally does not happen, at least not in my classrooms. And I had a learning goal, integrate original written paraphrasing of simple research findings in an original academic text correctly using citation guidelines. And I see them there with blah, 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 they're not listening. So once I learned this tip and I saw my material, I said, no, this is not really working. So what I did was I used the formula with ChatGPT, and then it gave me a how question. How can you cite other authors in your academic paper? So by following personalization principle, making it a bit more personal for them and giving them a how. So now they come to your classroom, they're like, okay, the teacher's gonna teach us how to cite, and I will be able to avoid plagiarism. So they immediately know what's in it for them. Remember that my first version was in-text citations. They don't even maybe know what that is, right? So by using these 2 simple formulas, you can engage them from the moment they enter the classroom, okay? Now, I want you to tell me, for today I said bring materials, but you can just think about them. So how do you engage students from the very beginning? What are your titles usually like? And would you change anything with these 2 tips, or like which one would you use?
Yeah, precisely. I was writing like my titles have been changed forever because I do have a presentation that says let's learn how to synthesize, and it's mainly to present the goals. But if I can, and it also has to do with time, right? Because I want to reuse the PowerPoints that I have in my classes, but I think that if I can differentiate them and make them more interesting. And it also can give them a sense of time because I usually have 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. classes.
Oh my
So
God, that's
yeah.
hard. Which of the 2 here do you think formulas would work for you? The one with big questions, how to, or the one with tips?
I think that the one with tips could work better.
Students love tips. It's amazing. Like they immediately get engaged. The way you present is key the topic, even if it's difficult, you make very, Sonia, I couldn't agree more. Silvina says, changing the title, although it seems to be a small detail, can be a game changer. I agree. I never thought of it until maybe last year. No, maybe a bit earlier, but like I had taught English for years with my titles, present perfect, blah, blah. And also, it's not bad to teach present perfect, but tell them what's in it for them. Talk about past experiences, or if you're teaching present simple, don't say, let's teach present simple, but like, tell us about your routines. Like Jaime asked me today, what do you do at weekends? Right,
Yes,
Jaime?
I was asking you using different grammar, but I didn't pay attention to the grammar. I was just focused on the information I wanted to get from you.
Correct. And you can say, today I'm going to help you learn how to describe your last holiday. And for that,
Right.
you're going to use past simple. And I do need to give you grammar, most probably because humans will ask for grammar. But like, you don't say, I'm going to teach you past simple. I'm like, why? Why would you teach me past simple, right? Okay. Number 3, the last one, okay? I'm looking at time. All design should focus on promoting active learning. Everything we do in our classroom, our number 1 goal should be active learning. What am I going to give you here? So I'm going to give you a bit of theory. I'm going to ask you to tell me examples of activities that you think are useful, and then I'm going to give you specific examples, good and bad. So active learning, we know a lot about active learning, but basically it's placing your student and their learning experience in the center of what's happening in the classroom. And for that, you need to think about everything you do. So assessment should be meaningful. There should be formative assessment. There should be enough feedback. Hati, who I will be citing a lot, in this last part of the presentation, he says that number one factor that has impact on learning is feedback. So we need to make sure that that's happening. We need to make sure that students know how they're assessed, why they're being assessed, etc.
And I would add, sorry, Giovanna, that students should be allowed to give feedback to the teachers too. And that is something that most teachers are afraid of doing. And we should do that so we know our weaknesses.
I agree. Being vulnerable with your students
Yeah.
helps you improve, because once you ask them, okay, what did you enjoy? What did you not enjoy? It will help you teach it better next time. And then
Right.
when students respond better, I think that we enjoy our job more. It's very
Bravo.
hard to speak and then receive only silence. Thank you. Feel free to keep interrupting me whenever you want. Okay, so learning environment. Why is learning environment important? Because we have emotions in our classroom. We have motivations in our classroom. We have affective filters in our classroom. So if your students go into your classroom and they don't feel safe, they don't think they can make mistakes comfortably and learn from them, or if you're designing materials that do not motivate them or are not appropriate for their culture or age, if you don't create environment where they can talk to each other freely, where they can enjoy the learning will probably not happen. I will not go into theory here. I cited some authors here, but like I will not go deep into theory because of the time. But basically all of the parts I'm showing are based on Hattie, Dweck, Yukai Cho, and Krashen, my favorite classic, but like very important for us. Methodology. So active methodologies usually work better than lecturing. I will show you some data in a bit. So we need to choose methodology carefully so it creates a meaningful learning experience for students. So Yukai Cho, in his book Actionable Gamification, he says that he explains how gaming and games were made following certain principles. And then when you transfer that to learning, and by a game, I don't mean playing games like Mentimeter and Kahoot, no, but creating and following the underlying principles of a game so the students can learn, and using methodologies that are like that will probably engage them more, because it's not that our students are lazy, it's just that they are not engaged. So through active methodologies, we can engage them more. That can be problem solving, that can be task-based learning, experiential learning, or any other. Interactions, super important. So the moment, we mentioned the same thing. Thank you, Stephanie. Interaction. So the moment you start designing your materials, you need to think about how will students interact. This includes interactions between them or among them, but also how they interact with the material, with the platform. So we saw PowerPoints, PDFs. How do they interact with that material? And that will affect how much they learn and how successful your materials are. And then finally, the content, what you want to teach. We need to choose the content carefully because there needs to be some usability. Content needs to be functional. Whatever we're teaching them should be something they can actually connect and use in real life. Present perfect, present simple, yes, important. Grammar is important. But are we teaching grammar for the sake of grammar or so they can use it in certain situations? So this is very complex, right? That's why material and instructional design are complex and teaching is complex, because you have to think about all of these factors. And now we have technology, right? So now it becomes more difficult because now you want to engage technology, you want to include it, but then how much? So it can contribute and not be a hindrance in your classroom. I have only one question on Mentimeter for you here. And I want to ask you, which strategies do you think are more effective than others in our classrooms? And then I'm going to tell you what Hattie says about it, okay? So it's the same Mentimeter. You can scan it. I'm going to open it. And give me a sec. I'm waiting for you to scan. Perfect. Or you can click on the same link. Give me a second. Okay. So give me a second. I'm going to change 2 slides here so we can come to this one. So now we're doing all design should focus on promoting active learning. And my question for you is, What works best in education? I give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cooperative learning, jigsaw, lectures, problem-based learning, inductive learning, or clickers. What are clickers? What I'm doing now? Kahoot, Menti, or their physical response versions it got together. So you asking a question and a student raising a hand, or stand up if it's true. That's basically as a clicker, because there should be some response. So you need to organize it from the most effective one to the least effective one. Let's see what you say. And if you want to talk about it, you're also welcome. Okay, perfect. So clickers, the most effective one, somebody said. Okay, it's moving. So you see how we have different opinions, and all of us are trained and qualified and care about our students, yet everybody has a different idea of what works best. Okay, we all agree that lectures are the least effective ones. Inductive learning, the first one. Cooperative learning, problem-based. Okay, it's still moving.
I have a love-hate relationship with jigsaw activities, and it has to. Okay, I like them because I truly believe that they are much better than you explaining the topic. However, when we have, or it has been my case, students that are, if they do not show the abilities to be advanced learners. Usually they cannot notice if they made a mistake, or they paraphrase the knowledge in a way in which they change completely the meaning, and then it becomes spreading the wrong idea, or sharing for reinforcing mistakes among each other. And I think jigsaw requires a level of autonomy and metacognition that sometimes goes beyond my audience. So that's why I have a love-hate relationship.
Good point. It's like ChatGPT hallucinating. Yeah, I guess that when we design them, we need to be very careful and probably provide them with an answer key or something. Maybe before they're like checking understanding, give them the answer key and then ask them to share with others. So it definitely requires lots of work from teachers to design it. Okay, so remember this, what you see on the screen. Now I'm going to tell you what Hattie says. Okay. So you said cooperative first, problem-based clickers. You put jigsaw as the fourth one, inductive as fifth, and lectures as sixth, okay? Now I'm going to tell you what Hattie says, and then we're going to see whether we agree with him or not. So. Sorry, I'm slow. Okay, here it goes. So are some strategies more effective than others? So the biggest question for all of us working in education is what works well? What should I do so that students can learn? What should I do so teachers can teach even better? So that's the question I think everybody's asking themselves every single day. So in this book, Visible Learning, there are different, this is the sequel, this is the last one published. There are also one which is more visual, like a visual guide to it, maybe a shorter version. You will also find previous versions. In this one, Hattie synthesizes over 15 years of research on education. What does he do in this book? So there are 2,100 meta-analysis, okay? So lots of meta-analysis, lots of statistics done by Hattie to help us understand what works better. How does he do it? And I'm not going to go into details, but just so you can understand the thermometers I will show in a bit. So he talks about effect size. Garrett would probably be able to explain this much better than me, but basically it's a statistical measure that evaluates the impact of different teaching practices on students' achievement. So what he did was he said, okay, let's see effect size. And he says, I'm going to rank various strategies based on their effect sizes. So the bigger the effect size, the more effective the teaching strategy. And Hattie says, if it's 0.4 or higher, it's working. If it's lower, it's not working. This is all we need to know for now, because like I'm not like I don't know statistics, but like let's start. I trust Hati deeply. So let's just memorize that if it's higher than 0.4, it's working. And this is what he shows us. So in his book, which I have here, I recommend it. It's great. It's amazing. He has lots of strategies that they analyzed through meta-analysis. And this is what he shows us. Jigsaw method, 1.29, okay? For it to work, it needs to be, what was the number? According to Hati, it should be?
0.04.
Very good. So 0.4 or 0.4 and up, it should work. 129. This is really high, right? So memorize it, because Jigsaw for you was the fourth one, I think, in the other one. Cooperative learning, 0.53. Now, Jigsaw is cooperative learning, right? But why is one more effective than other? What do you think? What is different between Jigsaw and cooperative learning? Garrett.
Maybe the Jigsaw has specific pieces that are missing and the other people have them. So all the information is present and they can interact and complete the big picture. I'm guessing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And what happens with Jigsaw, which can happen with cooperative learning, but maybe not necessarily, according to Hatis, are those teachbacks. I think that's the name for that. So what are the implications for material design? Because today we're here for material design. So if Jigsaw is working more than cooperative learning, then, and cooperative learning is working, so we should keep using it, we should include Jigsaw or activities such as think, pair, share, or define roles, small groups where you define roles, so each person has to do something, or include teachbacks where students have to learn something and then teach somebody else. So they say that that's the best way to learn. So Jigsaw will have that element of teaching somebody something, which cooperative learning may or may not necessarily have. Okay, so according to Hati on his meta-analysis, so Jigsaw would be first, cooperative learning is still effective, but a little bit lower. For us, when we voted, we did it the other way around. Next one. What works well? Problem-based learning has 0.61, which is also really good. So definitely problem-based learning should be done, and inductive learning. So if you design activities and materials for your classroom, ask students to solve problems. You can do it with big questions. You can give them a big question to solve a problem at the beginning of the class, and then throughout the class, they can work on that, find knowledge, explore knowledge, create something, etc. Inductive learning is also very, very effective according to the studies. So implications for instructional or material design are apply challenge or problem-based learning, and avoid explaining too much. Ask students to explore and then explain, but don't explain first because they will probably not be paying attention. Clickers are very debatable, okay? 0.21. Garrett, is this effective at all, or we don't know when you see the number?
I mean, when I see so 0.4 would be moderately effective. And so this would be just not very effective at all. Yeah.
Okay. Now, this does not mean that we should not use clickers, because Hati says that for clickers to work, they must be followed by feedback or group discussion on the why. So yes, you do the clicker, you do Mentimeter, you do Kahoot, but don't just change the slide. Explain correct and incorrect answers. Ask students to tell you why they chose A and not B. And this is where the learning happens. Now, we all know this, but with technology, it's very easy to forget that next step, because like we send them into breakout rooms, and I've made the mistakes, send them into breakout rooms. Okay, here's a Kahoot, or here's any app you use, quizzes. And then they click and click and click and answer questions, and it's fun and blah, blah. We love the class. Is learning happening? Maybe, but maybe not. So he says that when you use a clicker, but then you include feedback or group discussion, it goes up to 1.1. So now it becomes effective. So it's not so much the tool, but also how you're using that tool and what for. I have another tip that I'm not going to show today, but I call it know thy app. Basically, like know which app you're using and what you're using it for. Now, implications for design, use Mentimeter, use Kahoot, use anything that can make their learning more engaging, but do include small group discussions. And also, and in a bit, I'll mention affective filter again. These tools, Mentimeter and Kahoot and tools like that are very good because they're anonymous, okay? And I'm going to talk about how that anonymity or in affects learning, because you can do it with hands as well. Like I can tell, okay, raise hands, or what do you think? It's the same thing as a clicker, right? But then there's one factor. When I raise hand, it's Jovana making a mistake. When you answer incorrectly on a Mentimeter, we don't know if it's Jaime, right?
Yeah, and it can be me.
Okay, so clickers have benefits. Now, positive triggers, the book I showed you talks about positive and negative activators or triggers. So curiosity, 0.74. If they're curious, they're going to learn more. It's so natural, so common sense. And the research done backs that, how do you say it? Backs that up, right? It supports it, because if they're curious, they'll learn more. Now, sometimes they will not be intrinsically curious about the topic. We have to do something so they're more curious. Again, we had tip number 2, how to start, how to engage them. There are different ways to engage, so you can raise that curiosity. You can use content that has usability and value for your student. That will definitely help them be more curious, because if I can use it, I'll be more curious about it. Exploration activities at the beginning instead of immediately starting with your explanation. So that can help. Now, what does not work well? Anxiety. Anxiety is a factor if we create anxiety in our classroom. We know that, right? But when I saw this I was like, okay, so there's actually research that shows that anxiety will affect. It's a negative effect size. What does this mean? It means that we need to create with our materials. Materials need to be visually friendly. So going back to our principles, like if you have too much text, if it's not user-friendly for them, it might cause some frustration and anxiety, because they will struggle to learn. You need to create rapport. You need to create a safe space for mistakes. You need to provide immediate and constructive feedback, and ideally on anonymous responses apps like Kahoot and Menti. Because if I scare you, if I have maybe an app or an app which is not anonymous, they might be reluctant to answer, because then I know that Jaime made a mistake.
Yes.
So this is the only benefit of clickers compared to hands and total body response or total physical response, which also works, right? Like stand up if this sentence is true, or go to the left side of the classroom if it's true. So you include a little bit of movement as well. But with something that's anonymous, and by creating visually friendly materials that follow the principles, of course, and do not cause cognitive load, too much cognitive load, they will probably learn a bit better. And then definitely what doesn't, and you were right, for you, it was also the last one on the list, lectures do not. Now, we sometimes mix lectures and explicit explanations or explicit instruction. So lectures are one thing. Lectures are me talking for an hour. I'm almost doing that now, right? But implications for design say apply active learning and experiential learning instead of lectures, create challenges, problems to solve, big questions to answer, include think, pair, share, talk less, but give feedback more. Super important. And then one thing that also Hati says is offer explicit explanation, not just discovery. Sometimes we think, oh, active learning is sending them and then they'll explore materials and the learning will happen and I'll just mediate. True, but how do you mediate? So Hati says you do need to give explicit explanation. It's not just students parsing information and kind of putting everything together. When teacher gives explicit explanation of the content, students tend to learn a bit better. So I would say probably balance in between they're only exploring and you explaining, but avoid lectures. Here is a game I did with my students in academic writing course, and it worked quite well because it had elements of cooperative learning. It had some group cohesion. Group cohesion is a very important element in also a factor that affects learning. So what I did in my course was I asked them, okay, you're going to play that game like broken phone. You know that game? Like when they tell something to each other and then you see the last version. Okay, but I did it with writing. So I give them sentences they need to paraphrase, and they pass on their paraphrase sentence to each group. And then when the same sentence comes to you after 4 different versions of paraphrase, you need to check, is the meaning the same? So that's like a broken phone element. This one, my students ranked as one of the best activities because there was some group cohesion. They had to work together. There was cooperation. There was split responsibility because if one group paraphrases it poorly, the next one will also have an even worse version. So we're going to lose the meaning. So the whole group of students starts working better as a team. It was engaging. They had fun. And then at the same time, they were doing academic writing. And they realized that there is a usability in real life. If you make a mistake paraphrasing your message to your boss or to your colleagues, you can make a big mess. Okay, so this is just one example. There are many in which you can do it. Now, we're finishing. We have 4 more minutes. And now it's your time to assess me. So we have 2 more slides, this one and one more. Which of the 3 tips do you think is the most useful one for you, because we all teach in different contexts? And then I want you to assess me. What did I do well today and where did I fail?
Fail is such a strong word. Why don't we say where could you have areas to improve? And
We can
that's even.
also- Thank you, Stefan. Jaime, want to try?
Well, everything looks appealing, amazing to me. What I would say is that maybe we need more time to prepare and to put in practice what you were explaining to us. I feel now that I know almost nothing about about creating material, but I love at the same time all the tips and the way you were checking how much we knew or how much we didn't know. So it was right at the right balance.
Okay, so but I did include a bit more information maybe than I should have. So there was a bit of cognitive load, maybe. Okay. Feel free to come. You can name a specific principle, like Jovana, you didn't follow this principle, you didn't follow this tip.
Well, I would have liked to cooperate with the other members more, although I know it's a Sunday and well, it's hard. But I could say that considering the principles that you're giving us, like I would say that's the only one where I would say maybe a little space for improvement would have been promoting cooperation among each other. And you use clickers more, which in the context works, but that's it.
I
But at the
agree.
same time, dear Stephen, I guess it was necessary to have these many slides. What maybe we are shocked is that the speaker is asking the audience to tell her the mistakes or the things that she didn't get. So that's interesting. And I love that because we teachers should do that with our students. Let us know what we were not doing right, appropriately, or was confusing.
I would say I maybe failed a bit in principle number 3. Everything should lead to active learning, because yes, there was a bit active learning, but maybe some experiential learning would have been better. Some problem solving. Maybe I could have included a very short case, send you into breakout rooms, right? Ask
Maybe.
you to analyze it, ask you to figure out a solution, to suggest a solution. So I, for example, identified that. So next time I teach this workshop, maybe I could do that.
Yeah.
And which tip do you think you could apply?
All of them, depending, because I do all of that. Like I have to create material for one of my jobs and I have to create active learning experiences for the other one. And I think I'll use everything. I'm very happy I came. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Okay, and so to finish, I want to invite you. So we're gonna teach a course called Creative Material Design with AI for teachers. It should happen somewhere in August. It's gonna be a very short course. So I'm gonna share the link with you if anybody's interested in attending that course, and then I'll send you the information about it. It's Mondays and Wednesdays at 6:30. Give me a second, I'm gonna share the link with you. And then if you're interested, I'll contact you and send you the information. I'm going to share it here on our chat. And then just to finish, give me a moment. Just to finish for today, I want to thank you. I want to thank Jaime for inviting me, for being here with us, hosting the event. I want to thank the teachers because I know it's Sunday. Hopefully something from here will be useful for you in the future. And I don't know if you have any additional messages.
Yeah, if you allow me to thank you and share my screen.
Go ahead.
Before we thank you, let me remind everyone that our next roundtable will be on March the 30th. That is in 2 weeks, and we'll be talking about autism, living with love, and then in April. Exactly on April 20th, we have Ina Afroza from Bangladesh, and she will be talking about building community and belonging through civil discourse in today's world. Well, personally, it's been very insightful for me, very challenging, because I felt like a student, because I didn't know the answers. I didn't know, wow, what is it? I had never seen this before. Because I guess that we teachers just make and prepare material, but we didn't know about these principles. That happened to me. I don't know about the other people, Stephanie, Garrett, Sonia, Sandra, Silvina, Nuria, and Isabel.
I loved it. This is my favorite topic. I think Giovanna knows that last year I started getting into this and I just became hyper fixated and I started taking all of these courses. And I knew I was going to learn something new because I know Giovanna knows a lot.
And I learned something from you, Stephanie, that you are a good student and that you are learning and that you understood everything, and that's good.
And she got that coffee and not you, Jaime.
Yes. And a ceviche in Peru.
I have been to Peru, so do not lie about it because I have been and I will go back.
A pisco sour too, don't worry. Okay, Jerry, Sonia, Sandra, Silvina, Nuria, Isabel, something to say before we say goodbye to our guest today?
I wanted to say thank you very much because most of what you said is new for me. I have so many things to learn. Oh my God.
Yes, and that's beautiful, isn't it, Sandra? Because if there wouldn't be anything new to learn, wow, life would be boring.
Oh yes,
Agreed.
absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
for attending.
Thank you. Gary?
Thank you so much, Jova. It was really good to see. I loved that you brought Hattie and then also Clark and Meyer onto the PowerPoint and shared them with us. That was really fun to see those resources.
Yeah,
Thank you, Garrett. Thank you for attending.
Well,
And have a wonderful Sunday, everyone.
And I want to thank you once again, dear Jovana. You are ready for your PhD. Let's go to get our PhD.
We should do it together, Jaime.
Yes, I remember. So thank you once again, dear Giovanna, because it's been a very insightful, very explicit explanation about how tips for creating design. So the screen is all yours to say goodbye, dear Giovanna.
Bye, everyone. Have a wonderful Sunday, and I hope to see you all in next sessions with Jaime or with us, because I know that everybody who was here with us today, I met most of you face to face. I've worked closely with you, so hopefully in your next session, Jaime, maybe you can invite some of these lovely researchers and teachers so they can share ideas.
Yeah, thank you, dear Jovana, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, Stephanie, Gary, Silvina, Sonia, Nuria, Isabel, and all the people who were listening to us and watching us in Facebook Live. So I'll see you when I see you. Take care and have a good Sunday. Goodbye,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Thank you,
Ciao.
dear Jovana.
You're welcome. Ciao.
Bye, ciao.